everybody. Happy Monday. I hope each and every one of you had a wonderful weekend. It's me, John Lorden, here with another episode of Brain Scratch, Case Cracked. This one being recorded for Monday, July 16th, 2018. Thank you so much for spending some time with me here today. The case we're looking into is called the Soham Murders. Soham is a small town of about 10,000 people in East Cambridgeshire, England. Sunday, August 4th, 2002. Holly Wells and Jessica Chapman, both 10 years old, were at a family barbecue. Both girls were wearing matching jerseys of their favorite football team, or soccer if you live here in the United States, Manchester United. Both jerseys touted a large number 7 on the back, at the time representing player David Beckham. A picture was taken of the two girls with their bright red shirts on that very day. Around 8:30 p.m., Holly's parents went to check and couldn't find them. It appears the girls went out, possibly to go to a local store to buy some candy. A search began. Local neighbors helped, including the caretaker of the school that Holly and Jessica attended, a man named Ian Huntley. Ian's fiancée, Maxine, also previously worked at the school as a teacher's assistant and worked in the same class that Holly attended the previous year. Ian said that he was outside washing his dog and the girls walked by around 6:15 p.m. He spoke to the girls briefly and then they just walked off towards the library. He cried on a television interview saying he wished he could have said something different to make them stay or something to figure out where they were headed. A few other reported sightings after the time that he interacted with them turned out to be false. So it appears that Ian was the last person to interact with them directly. However, Ian had a solid alibi from his fiancée Maxine, who said she was at home and taking a bath at the time of the interaction. The photo of the two young girls wearing their matching jerseys became the defining image of this mystery. Where were they? What happened to them and who was responsible? Over the next few weeks, Ian and Maxine would continue to help in searches. On top of searching for the girls, Ian would actually help comfort the families and continue doing more interviews in the media. Maxine also did an interview where she showed a thank you card that Holly had previously made for her. And Maxine said that she would treasure the card forever. Several people were quick to note that in that interview, Maxine kept talking about Holly in the past tense. Despite having an alibi, suspicions continued to swirl around Huntley. Two journalists thought that he was being deceitful and passed that info along to police. A citizen saw footage of him on television and notified investigators of some shocking information. Ian Huntley had a criminal history from when he previously lived in Humberside. His past includes numerous charges, though very few convictions, most of them for sexual offenses and several of those with minors. The local police thought of him as a sexual predator, interacting with him on at least 10 different occasions, and he also had a burglary charge which he was convicted for. So how did he get a job working at a school with a past like that? For some reason, his background check was run on a different name. Ian Nixon. New policies and systems have been implemented since as a result of this particular case. But a significant development would be found at that school. The two Manchester United jerseys that the girls were last seen wearing were found in a trash can there, partially burnt. Holly also had a cell phone, which was turned off at 6:46 p.m. on the day they went missing. Investigators were able to use the signal from that cell phone to trace it back to being at the home of Ian Huntley when it was shut off. At 4 a.m. on August 17th, police arrested Ian and Maxine on suspicion of murder. Only a few hours later, the question of where the girls were would be answered, but not by the couple. Their bodies were found over 30 miles away, in a ditch in Thetford Forest Park. Their remains had also been burned. The person that found them was a gamekeeper, someone that takes care of the land and animals, who was walking through the area, had noticed a terrible, terrible smell and was trying to figure out what was causing it. The Soham community was crushed at the discovery. Many people were holding out hope that the girls would be found alive, including their parents. 2,000 people showed up for the memorial service. Reverend Tim Albin Jones stated, quote, "The very worst thing that could happen as a result of what took place in Somme is that a whole generation of children should grow up without being able to trust anyone. We must not raise our children to live in an atmosphere of constant fear and suspicion where everyone is mistrusted." So many flowers were sent that they literally lined the entire graveyard, which made for one of the most touching photos I have ever seen. Once the bodies were discovered, Ian's story changed. He now admitted that the girls died at his house, but states that it was an accident. He said that Holly had a nosebleed and that he accidentally knocked her into his bathtub and she drowned. Jessica was screaming so much about that accident that he covered up her mouth and accidentally suffocated her. At the trial, prosecutors had a real challenge. Due to the burning of the remains, a solid analysis of what the girls had been through was difficult. Huntley's own admission would certainly acknowledge at least a manslaughter, but they were going for murder. Would the prosecution be able to prove it? The jurors deliberated for over 17 hours and came back with a verdict. Huntley was indeed found guilty of the murder of Holly and Jessica and given 2 life sentences. In court, Maxine would claim that she didn't know about Huntley's crime and would only get convicted of one charge of perverting the course of justice for lying about the alibi that she provided. She was actually in Grimsby, over 100 miles away, visiting her family at the time of the murders. She said that she lied because she truly believed her fiancé was innocent. She was sentenced to 3.5 years and served just over half that time before being released. Upon release, she was put into police protection and given a new identity to avoid any public persecution. Apparently, several women who have a similar appearance to Maxine have been harassed and even assaulted in subsequent years. The home where the murder took place has been completely demolished and leveled, with the rubble being disposed of in several secret locations. Years later, a young girl named Samantha Bryan was researching crime rates for a school project and learned that her father was none other than Ian Huntley. She's recently commented in the media saying that she did reach out to him in prison to see if she could learn why he did this to Holly and Jessica, but after some correspondence with him, in which he said he really didn't want to discuss that with his daughter, she decided that she doesn't want to communicate with him anymore. He's currently being held in maximum security Franklin Prison and is now 44 years old. Since being imprisoned, in 2005, Huntley was scolded with boiling hot water by one inmate, and in 2002, another inmate slashed his throat with a razor blade attached to a toothbrush, which required emergency medical attention. He also attempted to kill himself with at least 2 overdoses, and during one of those episodes, he left a confession tape supposedly for his cellmate to sell upon their release. Staff found the cassette tape, which on one side said Queen and on the other side said Meatloaf. The tape somehow made it into the hands of someone at the publication The Sun. On top of his confession and apologies, he states that he knows he will never leave prison and says he will not ever apply for parole. According to some recent reports from a former inmate at the same prison, Huntley might be looking to change what prison he's in, though. They're saying that he's planning on applying for a gender reassignment, and at one point was wearing a wig and asking to be called Nicola, all in an effort to be transferred to a woman's prison. To date, no formal request has been made, so this might be all unsubstantiated rumor. While this may be a case cracked, the hearts that were shattered by this tragedy may never completely mend. On the 10-year anniversary of the girl's disappearance, Holly's father, Kevin Wells, spoke about his daughter and the aftermath of losing her. Quote, "Time doesn't heal. Someone got that wrong. It anesthetizes. Grief does not diminish, but you can manage the intensity and learn to live with it. Murder has the capacity to destroy more lives than the one taken." Case cracked. Very touching story. I know many of you out there like myself, are still thinking about the Delphi murders case, want to see movement in that case, want to see someone face justice for what happened to those 2 young girls. That's part of the reason why I wanted to share this one. And in this case, at least we can see justice did arrive. It came fairly quickly, and Ian is sitting in jail, supposedly for up to 40 years. I believe those 2 life sentences were combined and actually turned into a 40-year sentence. So I guess it would be sometime around 2042 where he might make it out onto the streets. I have to say, the whole angle of him looking for gender reassignment, I hope that's not true. I hope there are systems to stop that from happening. Just looking at the past of the things that he was being accused of in terms of being inappropriate with minors, but namely a lot of things towards women, I think it would be terrible to put him in a place with a bunch of new potential victims, even if these are people that are being incarcerated for crimes. I just think that would be a horrible disservice. And would probably, in my mind, be a bit of a failure in the justice system for him to be moved there. Could you really trust his intent for being there? Yeah, so, he gets gender reassignment. He decides he wants to become a woman. But don't you think somewhere in the back of his mind, he just wants to be around women because he has kind of been like that his whole life up to this point? I don't know. That part of the case really troubles me, but I couldn't find a whole lot of solid information. It sounds like it could just be this inmate talking, and who knows what motivation that inmate might have for spreading around a story like that. So let's look at some comments from last week's episode, The Case Cracked, we did on Christy Marac. First with Amy E. I was super sad about only 3 episodes a week, but I love the new format and interactions. So glad there are people like you doing what you do. Amy, I'm so glad there are people like you, and there are many of you out there that are basically letting me know that the changes seem to be good for me. Several of you are saying that, my energy seems completely different in the videos. I was certainly hoping for that. I thought that might be a side effect of this change, but I just want to thank you because I'm getting regular messages about this being a good change and several of you appreciating it. And I do know there are people sad about not getting to spend, 5 days a week with me. Like I said, last week, we had a mini scratch, so you got 4 this week. I think we do have another mini scratch, so you will at least get 4. I'm going to do my best. I want to really keep all of you happy, but doing these cases justice in terms of presenting them and researching them and giving enough time to all that, this new format is really, really working for me. So thank you to everyone that's letting me know what you guys think about that and supporting this change. And our next comment comes from Terry Dean, who wants to share some information about how this whole GED match thing works, and I really appreciate this. Terry says, I have DNA through Ancestry.com, and then I uploaded it to GED Match. The reason I think GED Match is being used by authorities is for the same reason I use it. People can upload their DNA from any of these services. If they had DNA done at Ancestry or Family Search or 23andMe or any other one, they can compare their DNA to people that used all the other services. If you only searched on one site, there are millions of people that don't have their DNA there. GED Match tells you where the DNA was analyzed, such as Ancestry.com. The authorities could then get records from the site that originally analyzed the DNA to see if there are even closer matches. I don't know if they do this, or if perhaps they just use a professional genealogist to figure out family lines from the initial information they got from GED Match. But both sites tell you in their privacy policy that your DNA is not private from any legal or police investigations, etc., and you have to agree to it to use their site. Thank you for the clarification on that, Terry. I didn't realize, I knew that GED Match was kind of considered like an open source DNA database, but I didn't consider that, of course, it was going to be fed from some of these other ones. And that might be a reason why when these stories pop up, we typically hear these companies like Ancestry say, no, that wasn't us. They weren't doing that from our site directly. I think the companies that are making money on this are a little concerned about that use. Even if they're allowing it in their agreement, I think just the public perception they're concerned about because they probably think it's going to limit their business a little bit. But I've seen comments from so many of you that why do I have anything to fear? If I'm not a criminal, why do I care if someone's looking at my DNA information? And I tend to agree with that. However, I do think there's a line of where if if you're being accused of something and it's not accurate information for some reason, then there's nothing there to protect you. I don't know. It's a bit of a hard situation for me to imagine, because I would like to think that the authorities are being very careful with what DNA they're selecting to use. But for example, if you did have intimate relations with someone and then they were murdered that same night, and then all of a sudden your DNA is found on them, even though you weren't involved in the murder, could this be problematic for you at some point? I do think at some level we're probably going to see at least that come up as a defense. I don't know if it'll be true or not, but I think we're going to see something like that come up as a defense in one of these cases. Moving forward to Lisa M. I hope and pray this technology can be used in the Delphi murders of Abby and Libby. It's so hard to believe that no one knows who the man in the picture is, or they do and are just afraid to turn him in. Same goes for the Missy Beavers case, killer caught on video and no one arrested yet. However, I can't remember if they have DNA in her case. It's been so long since I read Missy Beavers' case that my memory fails me on that particular point. Lisa, it's been a while for me too, admittedly. On Abby and Libby, they have not publicly stated there's DNA, but there's been some comments that I've seen that heavily suggest that they do have DNA in that case. And I'd be extremely surprised. Actually, I think I can fairly confidently say that this mechanism is known by the family of Abby and Libby, because when we were at CrimeCon, I was sitting right next to a survivor from the Golden State Killer and some other family members, and I know that they were talking to Abby and Libby's family a lot throughout that whole weekend. So I would bet that this method is already being looked at in that particular case. In terms of Missy Beavers, I'm trying to remember, I think when I interviewed Tim, he might have said that there was some suggestion that there was some type of DNA left behind. But once again, in terms of official media release on it, I don't think we've seen anything that kind of directly states that. I'd be really surprised if they didn't have some form of DNA. I have to imagine that there was some type of scuffle or fight that went on, and possibly some transference in the Missy Beavers case, but I'm not 100% sure. I'm a bit more confident in the Abby and Libby case that there is some form of DNA. At least the comments have been stronger around that for sure. So bright, I can't see. It's just so awesome that that company has solved quite a few cases recently by finding familial matches. I'm so glad to hear that justice is finally being served in this case. I bet that after the fact, those two students were so thankful they didn't hire the killer to be the DJ at their wedding. And then Barb Davis tells us, I live in Lancaster and I actually know someone who had this DJ booked for her wedding earlier this month. I have to agree. I think it would be terrible if they actually did use him at their wedding and then all this information came out after the fact. It would just taint that kind of special memory for them. And I think that that would be a really terrible thing. Yeah, there is a lot of fallout because he apparently was booked a lot. And one of the first articles I looked into on this, I actually got upset at, because the tone of the article was that, oh, well, you know, this guy killed some woman, and now because of that, there's a bunch of people that are scrambling to find new DJs. And it was like recommending different DJs, and it had video clips of DJs being interviewed that are like, hey, we'll take care of your party for you. And I was like, the coverage just really turned me off. I was like, what the heck? These people are talking about a murder. And the focus of that particular video segment and written article was specifically about, oh, there's a bunch of people that need to find a new DJ. It really hit me kind of wrong. I'm thankful I kept looking into the case, because obviously there was a lot to find for digging underneath that initial exposure to it. And yes, of course, I'm concerned that people don't have a DJ for their wedding that is happening, you know, soon. I just really didn't like that the news coverage was focusing on that as a particular angle, but you know, maybe that's just where my head was at that day. I also want to mention to everyone that the Brain Scratchers Facebook fan page is back. That Irish Girl has updated it. It has been overhauled pretty much from top to bottom. She's really looking forward to hitting 1,500 likes. And as a matter of fact, I'm working with her to send her some goodies to do for giveaways and stuff when she does hit 1,500 likes on that page. It is an official fan site, but obviously I'm not on Facebook, so I don't engage with it directly. I know that it's there. If That Irish Girl has some questions for me, she's in regular contact with me and all that stuff. It's not a great way to get case suggestions to me or information to me. It's just basically for fans to get together, talk about episodes, talk about what they think about the channel and that kind of stuff. So just wanted to let you know that it's there. And finally, we have a new patron that's actually someone I know, a man by the name of Frederick H. Crook. If that sounds familiar, you might have heard me previously talk about Wraithworks. This is a book that is written by my new patron, Frederick H. Crook, and I'm actually the story consultant on it. It is about a YouTuber who talks about true crime and winds up getting kind of wrapped up in a case. Or maybe the case gets wrapped up in him in some strange way. It's a really fun read. I think that a lot of you out there would appreciate it, particularly if you're a fan of the channel. If you are not into reading all that much, keep your eyes and ears on the channel for an announcement coming up, possibly an audiobook, possibly narrated by someone that you guys might know kind of well. That's all I'm going to say at this point, but thank you to Frederick for the support on Patreon. I truly appreciate it. If you guys want to support my work on Patreon or PayPal, just go to lordandarts.com. In the upper right-hand corner, you will see links to do each of those things, as well as you can buy merchandise, which also helps to support the channel, all at the new lordandarts.com. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for spending time with me here today. Thank you for all the positivity, all the great comments. I really feel good spending more time in the comments and just seeing that the community, the heart of the community that I was cultivating early on very easily, and it got really hard to as the growth kind of happened, the heart is still there. A lot of people that are caring about others, that are hearing these stories, that are looking for ways to help. I'm just so happy that the heart of what makes this channel so special to me is still firmly in place, and you are a part of that. So thank you so much for bringing me that joy and sharing that joy with others. It always really affects me when I see family members of the cases that we talk about, and they're so thankful, not only for my work, but for your guys' amazing comments as well. So thanks for being a part of that. Take care, everyone, and I'll see you back here on Wednesday with a brand new Searchlight.